How you doing, man? I'm Gil Roth, and you're listening to a bonus episode of my Virtual Memory Show podcast. This is a COVID check-in episode where I record with a past guest of the podcast to find out how they're holding up during the pandemic. As far as how I'm doing, meh. I found myself sort of compulsively eating yesterday afternoon into the evening, and that led to me waking up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, taking forever to get back to sleep, having exceedingly weird dreams. So no more Welsh rarebit for me. But enough about my belly and gastrointestinal setup. Let's get to today's guest, who is inspired by yesterday's guest. Ben Modell is checking in this time. Ben is a silent film accompanist, which means he plays along piano, organ, etc. to silent movies. We recorded around 4 years ago in one of my all-time favorite episodes on the recommendation of David Leopold, who I also ought to check in with. But this time around, his name came up from yesterday's guest, Michael Tisserand. That's because Ben is helping the world out during this crisis by co-hosting the Silent Comedy Watch Party, a live stream on YouTube that airs every Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. He and his longtime collaborator, Steve Massa, talk about that week's selection of silent comedy shorts, and then when they play them, Ben accompanies each one on the piano in his home. You get to see the whole shebang. Steve is remote, so he's on an iPhone screen, and he and Ben interact that way. That makes it all a little jerry-rigged, but who the hell am I to talk? I'm sitting here in my library recording away on my little recording setup. Overall, the whole thing is a joy. It's these two guys bringing this work and all their knowledge of the history to the world at a time that we're all locked up at home. So each episode, as I mentioned, is live streamed, but then they're archived on YouTube, so you can check them out anytime. You can find the whole archive there, as well as the new ones, at youtube.com/silentfilmmusic. And there'll be links to that in the show notes. I just think it's wonderful that Ben can take the thing that he's devoted his career to and adapt it to these awful circumstances and bring some light into people's lives. I'm just awfully grateful that this exists now that I've gotten to check out the first few episodes in the archive. They're a lot of fun and educational, but in a loose and freebooting kind of way. Tisserand yesterday referred to it as a master class in an old comedy. He's as a guy who knows that era, Michael says he's learning stuff every week about some of these comedians who he should know but doesn't. Anyway, that is youtube.com/silentfilmmusic. As far as caveats go, not a lot. Ben's levels are okay. But because he's on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, you can hear ambulance sirens in the background a couple times during the conversation, which of course is a reminder of exactly where we are right now. Now here's me and Ben. How are you coping?
Oh, I guess I'm coping okay, or I haven't noticed it. I go on Facebook and I see people asking for suggestions of what show to binge watch, and I don't know what that is. I don't have any more free time than I did before all of this, before we all got locked into our apartments. So, I was going to ask, in that respect, did it tell you something about yourself that, turns out my life was kind of geared for this scenario and I just didn't realize it?
Well, I'm certainly used to it. You know, it's when you work from home most of the time anyway, having to stay home, this is, it's not much. The difference for me is that I'm not putting on my black suit and getting on a train and going somewhere, a few times a week. Mm-hmm. But I spend enough time as my own agent and as my own digital production house and shipping department and what have you, that I'm kind of used to it. It doesn't really break up the routine that much.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's not as much of a learning curve for me as it may be for someone who goes into an office and works in a hedge fund every day.
Right. Yeah, I've had to explain to people that my wife and I work from home. I've been doing it for 6 years now. She's been doing it for longer. So really, between that and the fact that I don't actually have a social life, this is working out for me just fine.
Yeah, I already was working from home. So I'm just working from home a little bit more.
Yeah. Now, you're in the Upper West Side still?
Yeah, I'm in the Upper West Side. And
what's the vibe?
Well, it changes every day. Like when you turn on the news, the information we're getting is different every day. And so within a span of 3 or 4 days, my wife will go out just to get some air and exercise, or we'll take an essential grocery run to Zabar's, and the vibe out on the street every day or two, people are getting a little bit more cool about do-si-doing around each other as we approach one another. There are more masks. There are still plenty of people. They seem to be mostly younger people not wearing protective headgear, shall we say. And even the people in Zabar's are a little less hovery, shall we say. Yeah. It's an enclosed space anyway, but there's more people in there are putting on masks and waiting for you to pass by and not, peering into your basket and using words that have T's and P's in them to ask you about it.
Yeah, and not lunging past you to reach for something on the shelf. And
yeah. I mean, it's getting a little, and it's going to keep changing. I mean, by the time this airs, or whatever you want to call it, something may have changed already. But it does seem that people are getting more and more hip to being safe and playing it. Making sure that this doesn't spread.
Yeah. It'll be interesting if the idea of a return to normal is people shoving each other out of the way again. That'll be a little ironic, I guess.
Yeah, gosh, I hope so. I think that I forget who some years ago I was talking with somebody, and we were talking about how after 9/11, everybody in New Yorkers just got nicer a little bit.
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah, the stereotypical crabby New Yorker. That it's not. You don't find quite as many of them, and I think that hopefully, anyway, this will have a further humbling effect on people. But we are New Yorkers, and it'll be interesting to see what we wind up going back to.
Yeah, it's again the idea of a new normal. We'll see where it goes.
We'll see if it's normal. Yeah.
Now, tell me about the silent comedy watch party. The reason I remembered to get in touch with you for this one was I was recording with Michael Tisserand yesterday, and he said that is one of the things. The live stream of this is one of the things that's keeping him sane, relatively speaking, during this process. So, tell me about the watch party and what it entails and how you started it.
Well, thank you, Michael. The name is familiar to me because I think he and I started following each other on social media, and I think he signed up for one of my emails. I had this idea for a few years of trying to figure out a way to live accompany silent films over video streaming. And over a number of years, I had picked up different pieces of equipment to try different things in terms of iPhoneography and iPhone filmmaking. A lavalier microphone and different USB things, and I had all the different components. I had a video projector, I have a projection stand, I have Wi-Fi, I have a piano, and I drew drawings of how I could do this. And what had held me back was I was really more interested in getting people to go to shows, and I didn't want people to stay home and say I could see this on YouTube.
Sure.
Although I'm starting to think that the fact that something is streaming is not always necessarily a deterrent. Yes, people will sit on their couch and watch stuff and never leave their living room, but there are also people who may discover something and that'll spark something in them to want to go see it in person. So I kind of had this idea rolling around my brain anyway. And as I watched all of my shows fall like dominoes over a couple days period, I mean, one after one after one. Okay, this is closing. Everybody stay at home. This state says no, close everything up. I felt like I needed to. I mean, the idea came to me of, oh, you know what? I could do a live stream silent film show. I've had this idea. I kind of have it mapped out. I need to move some things around in the living room. And I thought, well, and my YouTube account is approved for live streaming. And so there was a learning curve tech-wise, but I'd been thinking about this for a while. And so I put together, I'm considering it a pilot because we only showed 2 films, and it was really to do it just to see, does it work technologically? If people tune in, that's lovely.
Yeah, proof of concept. Yeah,
that's exactly what somebody wrote to me and said. Why aren't you calling that pilot episode 1? It's because for me it was just a proof of concept. Will it work? Will it crash? Yeah. Will anybody be able to see it? How does it look? And the response to that was really fantastic, and it definitely worked. People saw it. People liked what they saw. The whole issue of is it broadcast quality, image quality? And it goes right out the window. I mean, we're in this time, and that time changed within days of doing the pilot, of being more and more in need of some kind of a release.
Sure.
You know, when we did it, the pilot was the 16th, Sunday the 16th. And at that time I said, well, you know, I have a show this Tuesday, and I have this thing this coming weekend at the AFI Silver. And within 48 hours, both of those and some things in April just fell. And so I thought, well, it works. There apparently are no silent film shows going on in the country pretty much right now. Let's go for it. And we did the first real show on March 22nd. And what struck me the most was the reactions I was getting from people.
Yeah.
Comments on Facebook and especially on Twitter, and emails I was getting. This meant something. It wasn't just a show. It wasn't like there was a show. Now it can't happen over there, so now I'm getting it on my iPad. But because we had all been inside for a week or so, and people, this is that first week where I don't know, not the first week, but the first week it really hit me anyway. That week of March, I guess it was the week after. Around the time of March 16th, when state by state was telling everybody stay home, work from home. And I know I myself had a hard time all that week of the 16th, just concentrating on other work I had to do. And so this outpouring of support and people saying how much it meant to them, how much it brightened their day, and like you said, your friend Michael was saying, is that I'm repeatedly getting messages from people that this is what they look forward to every weekend. So, it's. And so it's something we're going to do on a weekly basis until ... But and we've gotten a lot of support from getting the word out, both from fans and from other establishments with a much larger mailing list than I have, and consequently be able to reach more people. And people all over the planet are watching this and sitting down with their kids, and Ireland and Denmark and the Netherlands and Australia and Japan and a bunch of people in Brazil. Wow. And England. And these are the people I hear from.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. You know, I've a few different people in different scenarios who I've talked to in the last 2 weeks of doing these have, like teachers and such have said, like, we had to do a crash course in creating an online learning for our academy, but now we can use that whenever things go back to normal. We now have this new thing that we can do. So the idea that you found something like this, and that it's bringing people joy, but it's also, whenever we get back to quote unquote normal, a new option for you. That's wonderful that you have all this.
Yeah, it's something I'm starting to consider as far as continuing in some manner once the cinemas reopen, because one of the things that we're discovering, Steve Massa and I, my partner in crime on this, we're hearing from people who are watching with their kids and from people who do not have an art house cinema near them, and from hearing from people who've said, I've never watched silent film before, and this was great. And so we're reaching a lot of young people and reaching people who, because the amount of choices has dribbled down a little bit, and people are looking for some kind of a relief, and they're discovering it. And one of the things I've been trying to do for the last bunch of years is find ways to help preserve the audience by reaching people who might not otherwise watch a silent film because the name of the genre is terrible.
Right.
It might as well be just boring film. I mean, it's the worst name for something that is as fun as it is. So, and the other way that this gets passed on is people sit down with their kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews or people they babysit or whatever the situation is, because they know it's fun and they show it to kids and they get into it. So it's something that it turns out is not something that's going to keep people away from movie theaters. People are discovering an art form.
Yeah, and we're seeing all of these, not the art houses, but the major chains are looking at bankruptcy, et cetera. So we might be coming out into a new world where you're the savior of culture. That could actually be a good gig for you.
Yeah. Hey, if I could pull that sword out of my piano,
right?
I don't know about that. I mean, everything is going to have to reboot itself somehow. I don't know how that's going to happen. I mean, the chains are going to throw in the towel. The art houses will either thrive or they'll find some way to revive themselves. I think that the way Hollywood is going anyway, it's so, it's the choices and the kinds of movies that are getting made and released are so, almost polarizing, like so many other parts of our society are, that, the art houses and micro cinemas are really the ones who stand to gain from a reduced size of audience. I think they're already showing films that are interesting, and in smaller houses. But I think every form of business is going to have to look at
Yeah,
it's everything. We're all going to have to reconfigure everything. But I certainly hope that I can. Once cinemas reopen, I go back to gradually, carefully back into doing live shows, and maybe slowly taper off the live stream but there's still people for whom this is the only way they can, experience silent film with live music. That's the difference. I mean, there's tons of stuff on disc, streaming, YouTube and everything, but it's all canned music.
Sure.
Whether it's been uploaded illegally or not, it's there, but I try to stress the element of the live accompaniment in the watch party.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do you and Steve settle on what the movies are going to be for each week?
We talk it over by phone, of course, but we've been doing this together for 15 years. We've been working together, programming comedy shorts programs for the Museum of Modern Art. We don't work for MoMA, but we work with one of the curators who's friends of ours, usually either Ron Magliosi or Dave Kerr, and we've learned from them. So it's just a matter. Film programming is just knowing what you want to show, and who has it and where you're going to get it, and the rest of it is just setting the table. So we'll just discuss it by phone, and we think of it as in terms of entertainment. So you start with this kind of a short, and then you could put this kind of a short, but you have to end big with something like that, and not just, well, these three things were made in this chronological order, so that's how we're going to show them. So we go really for entertainment value. And not just, well, this is an important film. I know it's not all that funny, but it's rare. So because we're again, like I said, we're getting these comments from people who are just they just need to laugh for an hour. At something that is as transportive as silent film is, because you get drawn up and into this crazy world that used to exist, not just in that time, but silent film itself, because of the silence, the black and white, and the increased speed. It's almost a different universe, and so we're really going for. And it's our process, constantly evolves based on what we have access to. And initially, we were just going, okay, what has been released on DVD, and we would go through the list of shorts from there. And then I reached out to a number of the DVD distributors, because as much as, yes, the films themselves were public domain, and yes, other people have ripped the DVDs and Blu-rays and thrown the stuff up on YouTube without even asking permission, or especially asking permission of the composers. But I felt like I wanted to treat this up the way I would a regular show. I would clear the show with the distributor. And also, I've done scoring work for Kino Lorber and Milestone Films and Lobster Film and so I wanted to work. Terms. Yeah, I want to continue to work when this ends. So, I contacted them, and Steve and I are getting some very nice okays from Kino Lorber and Milestone and the iFilm Institute in the Netherlands, that has a few hundred films on their YouTube channel. From a collection that they preserved, the Jean Desmet film collection. And they were like, sure, anything that we've posted, you can also show. Nice. It would be, people have already, downloaded this stuff and reposted it on their channel, but I know Ellie Frankenkind, I want to, stay on good terms. So we reached out to her, and she said yes. And so, as the menu grows, we're not just showing stuff from the salad bar anymore. Yeah. There's a handful of Keaton shorts that we can show with the blessing of the distributor, and Charlie Chase comedies. So now we kind of have a formula, and we sat down, and it took us about 15 minutes, and we mapped out the 4 shows for April, knowing that we may come up with another idea and swap something out. But we've done dozens and dozens of comedy shorts shows, and know what works and what the good order is, what you can show when in the order, and it's like I said, it's almost like setting the table once you know what you're going to have for dinner and dessert.
Again, my only question then, is it a little different for you playing when it's a live audience but you can't hear them? Because I know you play with an audience and you play to record, and this is a weird hybrid. Is it different for you at all?
It is different, yeah. It's kind of like when I play for a film and it's just not going over.
Yeah, that's what I wonder, if you can't get the feedback from them. How's it feel?
Yeah, I mean, well, even in those shows when I'm in front of playing for an audience and it's just not landing, like if it's college kids or something like that in the middle of the day, I have trained myself to not be thrown by an audience's non-reaction. And I kind of go into what you would call like the record at home mode, and just imagine that it's going over well. And it's more of a composer mode, where I'm not taking into account out of the corner of my brain the vibe in the room. But the one thing that changed, when I record, I'm using a digital keyboard with samples of a Steinway D and grand piano, and for the watch party, I'm using my own piano, my own It was my grandmother's Baldwin Grand, and I have to tune it every week best I can. And so I am playing on an acoustic piano, and usually the only time I'm playing on an acoustic instrument is in a hall, in a theater, in an auditorium. And after the first show, or after it was either the pilot or the first show, and I watched some of the playback with my wife, and I realized that I was overplaying. I was playing as if it was a show, but I realized, and this is something that is a big part of, I think, doing a live stream show, is that the people watching were just across the room from me, about 6-8 feet away. And so from the next episode, I played the show as if the person watching with me, watching the film, was standing next to the piano.
Sure.
And not as loud, and not trying to fill the room. And I try to do that, and Steve and I both try to do this in our delivery. It's one of the things that I think if you've done a lot of radio or podcasting, you know that you're talking to an audience of one, and people. And I'm watching the late night hosts make this adjustment over a couple of weeks where they're at home, but they're still speaking at the same volume and type of projection as if there was an audience. And
they're in a theater as opposed to their living room.
Right. Yeah. But they are in their living room talking like, and it's confusing because the camera or your phone or whatever is a distance away. And I've noticed, my wife and I have noticed, when we FaceTime with our daughter, who's across town, you talk a little louder, and I think in the back of your mind, you think, oh, this person is way away from me.
Yeah. You're not on the phone. You're talking into their room. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But in reality, you are 5 or 6 feet away from them. And if you watch some of the best children's show hosts like Fred Rogers or Captain Kangaroo or any of those, and especially my broadcasting hero with television is Ernie Kovacs, and he had done several years of radio before getting into television. And you watch him, even the shows where he had to have a live audience, he's still talking as if the audience was 6-8 feet away from them. I don't know what the studio audience of 400 people heard. I'm assuming they had a PA system, but Ernie was just talking like he was in the room with you. And so we try to keep, I try to keep that sense of what Kovacs called an intimate vacuum through television, the television tube or LCD screen. And that was an adjustment I had to make in my playing, which I've never had to do.
And with the remote you mentioned you're still teaching.
Yeah. And
doing that remotely, does that differ in the same way, or is it I'm not sure like what the interaction with students is in that. Well,
I teach a course on silent film at the Wesleyan that's in Connecticut, and I play for everything that we watch. Well, I did until we went on the mid-semester break, and then all this happened. So I'm teaching the class now, and it's interesting. One thing that's different is that everybody in the class, because we're all doing it on Zoom, we're all watching each other take the class.
That's got to be weird. Yeah.
Usually the students are facing in one direction, the same direction at you, and you're facing in one direction while looking at this bunch of faces out in the dark or whatever, looking back at you. But now we're all watching each other take the class. And ironically, mostly the same people who speak up in class speak up in the Zoom class, even though we're all just looking right at each other. The adjustment is that they're watching the movies in their lap now between class sessions. You can't show moving image over Zoom. You can, but it winds up going through like you're communicating with somebody on a space station somewhere. It's just
the buffering.
Yeah, the buffering, and it's like 8 or 10 frames per second. It's just you can't watch movies that way. So it's it's where we are, and we're all, I talked to the other professors in the film department, and everybody's just dealing with this, and the students in the production classes are, they're sitting idle. You can't go shoot something unless you want to make a film about your own apartment.
We'll be seeing a lot of those, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, we're going to be, we're already seeing tons and tons of live stream shows. It's like within 5 days, everybody realized, oh, I could do a show with my phone. And you got on Facebook or whatever. But it's been an adjustment, teaching, but I think that one of the pluses is that I don't know how it is for my students, but it's gotten a little easier for me to connect because I'm looking at them one at a time and not scanning the room, going back and forth. But it's it's challenging to have a discussion because you all have to take turns with the muting and the unmuting and the way the audio works and everything. And I think everybody is trying to figure this out. My wife, Mona Allen, teaches at the Musical Theater Conservatory at Manhattan School of Music. And if you're teaching vocal performance, and she teaches this class with David Loud, and there's live accompaniment, and you have this back and forth, and people get up and they're especially the acting classes and musical theater classes, they're all reconfiguring. Okay, how do we teach this where we're not in the room? My daughter teaches tap at a school called Shuffles here in New York City, and she's teaching classes and private lessons over Zoom, and there, but you have to tell.
Imagine.
Everybody has to be muted because otherwise there's cacophony, or just an audio overload. But it's impressive how we're all just usually when presented with a new technology, because you have a choice, I guess. You can say, well, I don't need this. What's this for? That's this new stuff. I don't, whatever. But everybody seems to be, it may be more difficult for some people than others. But I'm really impressed how easily or quick, I think just because there's no choice. We have to figure out how to work on Zoom. And my wife, who is not as tech savvy as I am usually, she's the one who helped me get acclimated because she started teaching classes before I did, and she and her fellow teachers, they all had mock calls. They just decided on their own to set up just to pretend each of them are students and call on each other and stuff. So it's been very interesting how quickly we've all adapted to doing stuff in front of a screen because we have to.
Right. It's killing me that I have to do this instead of getting to sit down with you in person and have another conversation. But, the other thing would be killing me worse. So, I'll stick with this.
Yeah, exactly. And the ambient sound you get 6 feet away, it would.
I know.
Yeah.
Now, last question. A place that you're just dying to get back to, either theater, restaurant, Zabar's. Is there something that you're just thinking, if I could just go there again, I would feel at peace?
That's hard. You stumped me. I don't know that I have one place. People often ask me during Q&A, do you have a favorite film or do you have a favorite theater to play at? Occasionally someone will ask, do you have a favorite instrument, a piano you've played on? And it's never really about that for me. Cause I feel like wherever I'm doing a show, whether it's at the Cinema Arts Center on Long Island or at MoMA or at the Egyptian Theater in Boise, Idaho, or at a suburban library or at any place, it's there. In each case, it's an act of helping somebody share silent film with live music in a theater with people, and it's a question I never know how to answer.
I think anywhere with an audience, and not an audience that you perform, but just an audience that you're helping.
Yeah, because people. This is why I wanted to. The other thing that convinced me to do the stream is that, yes, these are all shows that I wasn't going to get to play. But the other side of that, each show represents 50, 80, 100, 200, 300 people who wanted to see Buster Keaton in whatever, or Harold Lloyd in Safety Last, who are now not going to get to see that. And so I think for me, part of it is about serving the fans as well as serving the genre, but people really like these films and they want to see them. So, regardless of where it is, I mean, I have theaters that I love, that I've played at, that I really would love to play at again, or that I usually just play once a year, that are just really special theaters. But there's the senior living facility out in Westchester County that I do something once a year, and seeing the faces of everybody before the show, and then I show them, a Harold Lloyd feature, and then the lights come up and everyone's face has changed, and so it's not really about the theater or the instrument or the film for me. I'm helping the medium live on with people, and somebody wrote to me that there's something that's really transportive about silent film, and it takes you somewhere. And so that's really long. It's a really long trip to say I have no idea. I always wish I could say, bam, there's my answer. Yeah. But anywhere you can turn the lights off and run a film for an audience with live music.
That sounds perfect. Sounds like heaven. So yeah. Ben, thanks so much for coming on. This will air tomorrow morning.
Oh, that's quick.
The listeners won't know about, and I will check in. Is it Sunday nights, the series?
The Silent Comedy Watch Party airs every Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's the easiest way to find it is it's www.silentcomedywatchparty.com.
I will put a link to it in the show notes.
Thanks
so much for coming on.
All right, you're welcome.
That was Ben Modell. Go check out his website, silentfilmmusic.com, to learn more about his life in accompanying and researching silent films, the podcasts that he does irregularly, make sure you check out the Silent Comedy Watch Party, which there are links to there, but which live streams every Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern and is on youtube.com/silentfilmmusic. Those are all spelled exactly like they sound, which is ironic because it's silent. But anyway, the past episodes, the first 3 are archived, as all upcoming ones will be. We'll see where it goes as the lockdown recedes, but I kind of have this hope that Ben and Steve make this a regular thing, even if it's not weekly, once we're allegedly back to normal. So you can watch Ben and his co-host, Steve Massa, and these great old comedies anytime. Again, youtube.com/silentfilmmusic. Ben's also on Twitter and Instagram as Silent Film Music, and on Facebook as Silent Film Accompanist. And we'll be back tomorrow with another COVID check-in. If you want to send me a little update to read on the air or have something you want to share with the listeners, let me know and we'll set something up. I'm at groth18@gmail.com. You can find the contact info at our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. The latter has a link to the COVID-19 sessions in the menu bar, and that's got every one of these daily check-in podcasts that I've done for the last 2+ weeks. And in case you're interested in how I am doing this remote setup as opposed to the in-person episodes that I'm used to doing, this is all done with Zencastr.com. That allows both parties to record their sides of the conversation, then automatically uploads both of those tracks to basically to my Dropbox file folder, so that I'm able to integrate those, make the whole podcast work, and sound a lot better than if I was recording the incoming audio. Which is a long way of saying this is a nice way to handle remotes, although I'm still dying to record in person again. Zencastr at the pro level costs $20 a month, but my Patreon support more than covers that, especially since I'm not spending money now on parking, tolls, subway rides, coffee, etc. for all those in-person episodes that I was doing. If you can spare anything, don't give it to me. Go find the Patreons, the GoFundMes, Indiegogos, Kickstarters, tip jars, whatever the crowdfunding source is, or just give some money directly to the artists, writers, and people in need. Show them some support, and if you're one of those people in need, ask. Don't hesitate to ask. Don't feel guilt. Don't feel guilt at not giving to someone else when you're in need too. Anyway, I am Gil Roth. It is April 9th, 2020, so happy Passover to my Jewish listeners. This is a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories show. Thanks for listening. Keep the conversation going, stay safe, and wash your damn hands.